Probably the first great team. Well, not probably, definitely the first great team in NBA history was, of course, the Minneapolis Lakers. They won five of the first six NBA championships. And the first great player, or a GOAT, if you will, was George Mikan. Big man, 6'10", career average 23.5 points per game. He led that team. The Lakers were the league's dynasty. I think the Syracuse franchise won a couple of titles. And then in the late 50s, the Boston Celtics started to emerge, led by Bob Cousy, and not Bill Russell at that time. Bob Cousy won the 1957 MVP and started the Boston Celtics dynasty. And he would essentially lead it until about 1962-63, at which point Bill Russell who pretty much took over the lead of that dynasty. Now, from the vantage point of, let's say, the 1960 Celtics, what do you have to do to be considered the greatest team in NBA history? And from the vantage point of Bob Cousy and then subsequently Bill Russell, what do you have to do to be considered the greatest player in NBA history? Well, you got to surpass what the Lakers did. And individually, you got to try to surpass what George Mikan did. Now, Bob Cousy did not surpass what George Mikan did, but Bill Russell most certainly did. Bill Russell would go on to win 11 chips famously, 11 out of 13. And would supplant the Lakers as the Celtics would supplant the Lakers as the league's greatest dynasty. So here's my question. If it's 1965, or 1963 for that matter, what do you do to become the greatest team in NBA history? What do you do to become the greatest player in NBA history? Do you decide that you're, quote, done with the 50s because no player in the 50s was as athletic as was Bill Russell, and no player in the 50s was as much of a magician with the ball as was Bob Cousy? Or do you keep winning championships? I'm just saying. I am very disturbed by this done with the 90s movement, because it seems like a lot of our young people seem to think that traveling a distance of 26.2 miles in 30 minutes is a flex. The point is to run the marathon. It's not to do it. The fact that you are able to do it faster than prior generations, that means nothing. That means nothing. So the argument is that because contemporary players are, or at least seem to be, more skilled, more athletic than players in the 90s, that the dominant player, which is presumed to be LeBron James, of this era, must by definition be the greatest player of all time. Well, first of all, that's debatable. I seem to remember Michael Jordan's something like 47-inch vertical leap. And you know, I digress. But even if we were to say, even if we could objectively prove, even if we could prove that LeBron was somehow more athletic or more talented on a person-to-person basis than was Michael Jordan, so what? We evaluate great players based on how they dominated their era. Okay? That's the metric. Because of course players get better. Of course they become more skilled. The 6'8" version of LeBron James that was born in 1960, I don't know, probably ended up in the NFL somewhere. It's probably Ed Too Tall Jones of the Dallas Cowboys, or he probably had a mediocre, career as a wrestler or something. He certainly didn't spend his entire life playing basketball and being trained at a high level to maximize his gifts. Who cares? That's not the point. I want you to really think about this, okay? This GOAT debate as it progresses, okay? So we've got the 60s, Wilt and Bill Russell, okay? Then comes Kareem, okay? Kareem, likely interested in being considered the greatest player of all time, he's got a problem, okay? The two people ahead of him have 36,000 points, one of them, and the other one has 11 chips. It's not enough to say, oh, well, God, nobody was as skilled as I am at 7'2". Wilt wasn't as skilled as I am. And, the 60s players, oh, God, there were very few black players in the league in the 60s. How can they, the fact that I dominated the 70s, that should mean I'm the GOAT. No. You've got to deal with the 11 championships. You've got to deal with the 36,000 points Wilt Chamberlain put up. And you've got to either exceed it or make an argument that what you did was more of an accomplishment. And that's what Kareem did. Okay? That's what he did. Okay? That's why it was so important for the Lakers to repeat in 1987, because no one had done it since the Celtics. Okay? The recognition was that building the type of dynasties that existed in the 60s was never going to happen again. And so that you had a team that could actually win the chip and then do it again, and then in totality have 5 championships in a 9-year period, you have to take that seriously. That is a championship-based argument that you are, in fact, the greatest team in NBA history, led by the greatest player in NBA history. Okay? It's not, you didn't try to just dismiss the prior generation. You made an argument that you exceeded it. Okay? So Michael Jordan comes along in the 90s, wins 3 chips. Actually, it was him and Scottie Pippen, but he wins 3 chips. Okay? Retires. Comes back. Okay? You ever ask yourself, what was it in Michael Jordan that motivated him to come back? Why come back? It's already set for life. Why come back? Let me tell you the likely reason he came back. He came back because there were Laker fans like me that were never going to give him the credit for being the greatest player of all time because he didn't have 5 championships. Okay? My guy, Magic, my guy, Kareem, we've got 5. You only have 3, Michael. Okay? So you can't be the GOAT. So Mike came back and he three-peated again. He didn't say, oh, well, God, I mean, the 80s, those players were coked up and, there was so much, rambunctious stuff going on in the league, and the league is much more disciplined and it's a much better league now, and I'm dominant in it, so I get to be the GOAT, even though I haven't exceeded what the Lakers did. No, you've got to beat it, or you've got to make a case, a championship-based argument that you did beat it. Okay? Kobe comes along in the 2000s. What's the standard? 6 championships. The standard is 6 championships. Okay? That because Michael Jordan had convinced a sizable majority of the NBA community that his argument overall was more comprehensive, was better than Kareem's, better than Wilt's, better than than Bill Russell, even though Bill Russell had 11 chips. Okay? So the Kobe and Shaq, they essentially battle for supremacy of the team. They win 3 championships. Shaq goes away, he wins his 4th. Kobe wins 5 and is obsessed with getting that 6th chip. Because the standard is the standard. You've got to get, the standard is 6 chips. Okay? Now, I'm stepping forward and I'm making the case that Kobe's 5 is more impressive than Michael's 6. But what I'm not doing is saying, oh, well, God, the 90s, that's just, you can't really, Kobe's era. Look how many great one-on-one players existed in the 2010s. The 90s didn't have so many great one-on-one players. The 2010s had Tracy McGrady and had Allen Iverson and Carmelo Anthony. So the 90s didn't have those types of players. So my guy who dominated the 2010s, he's the GOAT. This is foolishness. The standard is the standard. Okay? This 90s, done with the 90s movement does not help LeBron James's case. The standard is the standard. Because everybody's going to be able to go back and look at the record books. And unless something radical happens, it's going to read 4 and 6. LeBron James's legacy is basically that of Wilt Chamberlain. Okay? Perhaps the most talented individual player in NBA history who left a lot to be desired from a team perspective. That's not the GOAT. That's not the GOAT. And on my platform, I've laid out why he doesn't win better. He doesn't win more with his from a team perspective. And it basically comes down to, he hasn't been great defensively for, a long enough duration of his career. But, I mean, I personally think LeBron, up until about a month ago, LeBron did have the longevity argument. Um, but I mean, with recent developments, you know, that argument is no longer valid. Uh, but I personally think he did have the longevity argument, and he would have the argument of having won with three franchises. So in theory, I mean, you could make that case. You could make the case like Kawhi. If the Clippers win the chip this year, Kawhi will be able to say, okay, well, I won with three different franchises. Okay. The problem there for LeBron is that LeBron has played with so much talent. So, I mean, if he had, played with just basically a normal amount of great teammates, maybe just one or two Hall of Famers rather than, you know, the number that he has, he'd have a much stronger case. But LeBron does not, LeBron, as of right, LeBron does not have a GOAT case, and scoring 40,000 points is basically irrelevant to that because it is great players. Great players are judged by chips. And that's the only way we can judge them. We can't. I did a Twitter post, okay? This guy, Bron Muse, he says, he posts about LeBron and, the great 2018 season. Okay. So, if you really believe that, why wouldn't Victor Wembanyama be the GOAT 20 years from now if he's got 43,000 points and one chip? If he exceeds LeBron in points and, rebounds, let's say, points, rebounds, he'll certainly exceed him in blocks. Okay? And he only has one chip. Why wouldn't he be the GOAT? You have to evaluate great players by chips. Okay? Your argument's got to be about championships. Okay? And LeBron leaves a lot to be desired in that regard. The being done with the 90s does not help LeBron. And that's just is what it is.